So first things first, going to start with some scrap wood of different sizes. This is 3/4 inch thickness, same as the hive body. I have these pieces here, long and small. We're going to rip these on a table saw into pieces to make the boxes. Obviously, you'd use the short ones for the short ends. And here what we have is the Honey Run apiaries design that you can get on the web, or you could buy it directly from them. As they always say, start with the end in mind. So this is the device that we're looking at and what those plans will make. You can see it's got 3/4 inch sides. It's got a bottom of 1/4 inch Luan plywood.
Yeah. 1/8 inch screen covering the holes.
Yeah.
A notch into it for vented cover.
Mm-hmm.
Recess on the bottom, same as you would a regular inner cover.
Yeah. And talk about, Roger, what we just discussed about these holes on the front. We had read on the web, I read on the web, that people had said the bees got confused trying to go in those. How do you handle that in the winter?
In the wintertime, I just take Gorilla duct tape right over top of it. When the weather gets nice in the spring again, I tear them off. I have noticed that if I have a feeder in the top, I'm a firm believer of putting feeders in the top here and letting the bees come up through.
Mm-hmm.
That bees will they'll smell the sugar and try to go into these holes during the summer if I got a feeder inside. I can show you my favorite ways of feeding my bees is a chick water. This isn't my favorite model, but this works quite well. Hold a gallon of syrup, fill it up, put this on top, close it up. I made a little wooden ring to fit in here to float so you don't, because once in a while you get a hive where you get a bunch of bees that get in there and drown. Another thing you got to do, you got to take a rough sandpaper and sand this smooth plastic so the bees can get a foothold and crawl in and out of it. And I just set this inside here. They've got room to come up through this inner hole here.
Yeah.
To go up and feed. I put an empty super on top of it and my lid on top. And when you go to feed, you're not interrupting the hive like you would a frame feeder. Because when you have a frame feeder, you got to take this whole box out, fill the frame feeder. This is much easier to take and fill, put in and out. And I've had, I think, personally much better success with these than a frame feeder. And I really don't like the front feeders, which induces rotting.
So what we got here is wood that's cut to height. This is 4 inch for the experiment that I'm doing, and this is 3.5 to what Roger's doing, which is the standard plan for Honey Run apiaries. Now what we have to do is cut them to length for the short and long sides. All the wood's cut to length, ready to go. Next thing is to drill it. These are the special ones that I made and ones that Roger's making. Set up a 1/4 inch dado bit.
turn the cam a little bit to adjust the wobble. Can't see too much of a
I can
wobble
see it.
there.
Yeah. I can see the torque when you turn it.
There.
Yep. Cool.
We're going to try it on the plywood. There we go, 3/8 of an inch.
Okay. Let me see this piece if you would. So we're looking for 3/8 from this outside edge to the inside of the dado, and we're looking for a depth of 3/8 from the inside edge to here where the plywood goes in, according to the plans. So now the saw is set properly.
We set a little jig up on the drill press so we could mass drill these holes in the side of these vented covers, and we drill them on an angle so that the rainwater will run out instead of into the hive. The jig just means you're doing a lot of pieces to help set it up so that we just don't have to worry about positioning and marking each hole identical. It's a 1-inch Forstner bit, or 1-inch hole. And the finished product, the holes are tapered up on an angle, so any rain hits it will run out.
These are the wires that we're using to cut. I know that's hard to see. Let me see if I can move it over here. There you can see it a little better from the light. And the purpose of these is that they're going to go over top of the holes so that the bees can't pass out through it. And if you look at our working prototype, you can see even better how they're fastened. Okay? Here are 3 assembled pieces with the foam insulation inserts. The boxes are secured with screws, and the foam is 2-inch insulation foam purchased from a box store. These boxes were built a 1/2 inch deeper than the original plans, and there's a reason for that. As you can see in this shot, the extra space allows for filler to go underneath the foam insulation. The filler here is shredded paper, and the purpose of this is that the moist air will either be collected by that, or it will rise up, hit the foam, possibly condense, and if it does drip back down, it'll drip on the paper and be absorbed. Absorbed and not dripping back down on the bees. In addition to the hive top insulators, we found a video on YouTube on how to make a candy board. In this case, it's just 4 pieces of wood tacked together with some sort of floor that has an opening that the bees can come in and get to the sugar that's built inside. This is the version that Roger built, and it has an open floor with a screen mesh that the bees can pass up into, and you would put this on the hive when you ever wanted to put some feed for them. Typically a late winter, early spring activity. So here's another version of the feeder box. It's almost identical except for the floor is a little bit different. It has 2-inch sides with a plastic queen excluder setting on the bottom. And the way the queen excluder works is I've built some shims, you can see. And the purpose of this frame on the bottom of it is to allow for some movement on this plastic excluder. When you put the sugar in it, it might sag a little bit. If it were sitting on the hive, it would sag and go right down on top of the frames. So this is going to allow a little bit of airspace underneath for the sag of the plastic queen excluder. Now, if you didn't like the plastic part and you wanted to make it a little bit stiffer, you could spend a little more money and invest in maybe a metal queen excluder, and this one is not going to bend. So now the way this is designed to work, in late winter, early spring, when you need to put some feed on the, some additional stores for the bees to eat, you would put this on top of the brood chamber or right over top of your honey box, and then you would take an insulation box and put that on top. I don't have any right now since they're on the hive, so I'll use this one as an example. And you would have your candy board down underneath on the bottom and your insulation box on the top. The insulation boxes that we built in the video have a notch cut out of them right here, so the bees can come up through and exit to the top of the hive there, and therefore I haven't cut some sort of entrance notch on these, but I suppose you could if you were going to just use them that way. So this will go on a little bit later in the year on our hives, and we'll fill them with sugar and we'll be able to give them some supplemental feed. So one thing we didn't talk about in the video is the actual assembly of how these worked, and I didn't show it very well after assembly, so I wanted to cover it real quick. What I have here is a couple spare pieces, and these are the sideboards that we made. You can see the holes are tapered on a slant, and we have pre-drilled holes on each end for them to go together. Now these are two long boards, and what you would have is two long boards and two short boards. For the purpose of demonstration here, I'll just put them together, and you could see that we dadoed a notch. And what you would do is you would take a piece of thin board and slide it in for the floor here into the notch, and it would hold it together. In the ones that I built, I did something a little bit differently. I put the two boards together and I slid little sleeves in between and left a gap and tacked them in. And then I used this material, which is some sort of gutter. See if I can get a good look at it. So it's some sort of gutter guard plastic piece, and what I did was I ran strips across the inside. So the paper boards that I had these alternating like this, and then a piece of wood and a thing and a piece of wood, and therefore the venting could come up through the bottom. I suppose you could have tried something like this also for venting and put the paper, as you can see there's some paper here from the design. Now I don't know if the paper was the best idea. It was something to try, but paper is the thing that I found is, as you can see here, the paper is falling through the little slots. And when I went out and checked the hives about a week after, is I took the clumps of paper that were shredded and put it on there. Some of them fell through, and the bees have actually carried it out the front of the hive. I'm sure after a while it'll get matted down, and I'll have to probably find some better substrate rather than shredded paper. But I had shredded paper, it was free, and it was viable for the job. So anyway, that's just a quick update about assembly. You would use these pieces here with the dado bit and just slide a floor in the bottom. So as we're in the garage looking over the stack of equipment getting ready for spring, I'll tell you that you can find the information here at the end, and everything's unpiled here because I was just digging, but we'll provide links at the end of the video here for a bunch of different resources of where you can get the plans for these things, and you can make your own. Thanks for watching.